The night I first saw him, I was certain I was alone. The forest stretched endlessly around me, dark and silent. The trees standing like black sentinels under the silver glow of the moon. Each step I took was swallowed by the thick carpet of fallen leaves, each breath visible in the crisp autumn air. Normally, I loved nights like this, quiet, reflective, a chance to escape the hum of ordinary life, but tonight, something felt different. Something. Waiting, I had come here to think. To escape the clutter of a world that demanded smiles I didn't feel and answers I didn't know. My life had been a series of routines. Wake, work, go home, sleep, repeat. It was safe, predictable. Yet, as I wandered further into the woods, the safety I clung to slipped through my fingers like smoke. There was an energy here, one I could not name but felt pressing against the edges of my awareness. An invisible pulse beneath the earth, in the rustle of branches. In the chill of the wind, I paused near a fallen oak. Its trunk massive and gnarled roots, like twisted fingers clawing at the soil. I leaned against it, closing my eyes for a moment, breathing in the sharp scent of pine and damp earth. And then I felt it. The unmistakable sensation of being watched, not just looked at, watched, studied. Measured, my eyes snapped open, scanning the shadows between the trees. My pulse quickened, my heart hammering like a warning drum. "Hello!" I called softly, hoping my voice sounded braver than I felt. Only silence answered. The forest held its breath. I tried to shake it off as imagination. The wind, the rustle of a small animal, anything ordinary, but the feeling refused to leave. A shadow shifted in the corner of my vision. Just a flicker, gone when I turned my head. My throat went dry. I wasn't prone to fire, prided myself on rationality, but rationality seemed to retreat in the presence of whatever lurked in. These woods tonight, and then came the sound. A step, soft but deliberate, measured. Not the erratic scuttle of a deer or rabbit, but the footfall of someone or something moving with intent. I held my breath, straining to hear. Another step closer. I considered running, but my feet felt rooted, my body betraying me with the impossible weight of anticipation. And then I saw him. He emerged from the shadows as though the darkness itself had shaped him, sculpted him from shadow and moonlight. Tall, broad-shouldered, hair the color of midnight eyes. Eyes that seemed to hold the storm itself. I felt the air shift around him. Even standing still, he commanded presence. I could feel it in my chest, an unrelenting pull that made my knees weak and my thoughts scatter. For a moment, thought I must be dreaming. Dreams had started haunting me lately, strange, vivid, with images I could not explain. Shadows moving just out of reach, whispers carried on the wind, a figure with piercing eyes that stared into my very soul. But this was no dream. He was real. Too real. Who? Are you? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled a small, almost predatory smile that didn't scare me but made my heart race all the same. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice smooth and low, like a melody that lingers long after the note is gone. I didn't mean to." My words faltered. Drowned by the rising intensity of the moment, he stepped closer. And I could smell it then. Something wild like the forest itself, clean and primal. It made my skin prickle, my senses sharpen. And yet, beneath the raw animalistic scent, there was something softer. Something familiar, though I couldn't place it. "I felt you," he said, almost to himself. "Before you even came." The words made my heart skip. What could he possibly mean? And why did they stir something deep within me, something that felt like recognition? Like I had been waiting for him all my life without knowing it. I wanted to turn and run to escape this strange, overwhelming force, but curiosity rooted me in place. I couldn't look away. There was danger here. I knew it instinctively. Something about him was not entirely human. And yet my instincts whispered a truth I didn't dare speak. I wanted to stay. The forest seemed to lean in closer, holding its breath with me. Even the wind had stilled, as though the trees themselves were aware of him. And then, without warning, he did something that made the world tilt on its axis. He extended his hand. Not aggressively, not threateningly, but as an offering. An invitation. I hesitated, staring at the hand, then at his face, then back to the hand. Every rational thought screamed at me to refuse, to retreat, to remember that nothing good came from encounters like this. And yet I felt a pull, a need I didn't understand, a thread connecting me to him across the shadows and silence. I stepped forward, almost against my own will, and took his hand. The moment our skin touched, a shock ran through me, not painful but electric, stirring something deep in my chest. I gasped. My surroundings blurred. The forest, the trees, the moonlight, tip days, all felt distant. All that existed was him and the thread that now tied me to him in ways I could not name. Then came the whisper in my mind. Not his voice, but another voice, soft, urgent, familiar in a way that made my blood run cold. You found him. He is yours. But he is forbidden. I froze, heart pounding. The sensation was fleeting, yet undeniable. My eyes met his, and I saw the same flicker of recognition mirrored there, along with something else, conflict, restraint, and something unbearably longing before I could speak. He withdrew slightly, a shadow of regret crossing his features. I shouldn't be here, he said quietly. And you shouldn't have felt that. I didn't understand. Didn't know what he meant. All I knew was that the night had shifted, that the forest itself had changed, and that the ordinary world I had known no longer existed. The ordinary me no longer existed. And then, without warning, he vanished into the darkness. One moment he was there, commanding and alive. The next he was gone, leaving only the echo of his presence, the faint scent of pine and something wild in the air. I stood alone among the trees, trembling, my hand tingling from where his had touched mine. Something in me had awakened, something I could neither name nor resist. And in the distance, a low, haunting growl, soft, yet full of warning, rolled through the forest. I knew, the certainty that made my chest ache, that my life had changed forever. Whatever he was, whatever I had just felt, it was only the beginning, and the forest held its secrets close, waiting for me to uncover them more, for them to consume me. I didn't know it then, but I was no longer merely human. I had crossed a threshold, and something in the shadows had taken notice. Something powerful, something ancient, and something that had claimed me before I even knew his name. The night was quiet again, almost unnaturally so. But I could still feel him, still feel the pull. And I knew with a shiver that ran from my spine to the tips of my fingers that I was being drawn into a world I could never escape. A world where fate would not ask for permission, and where the heart could be both the most dangerous battlefield and the most wondrous home. The days after that night in the forest were strange. Ordinary life continued in its familiar rhythm, but everything felt thinner somehow, as if the world had lost its edges. The air in my apartment seemed heavier, carrying the faint scent of pine and something wild I couldn't place. Even the sunlight felt sharper, cutting through the windows in a way that made me squint and shiver. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, a trick of nerves, a forest memory lingering too vividly. But the sensation wouldn't leave. It followed me to work, into the grocery store, even as I walked past neighbors I had known for years. I felt eyes on me, fleeting glimpses of movement in the corner of my vision that vanished whenever I turned. It started small, a shadow where none should be, a whisper on the wind that sounded like my name but evaporated before I could respond. My dreams became different. No longer the usual blur of anxiety or work stress they had formed now, figures standing in moonlit woods, eyes glowing, voices carrying warnings I didn't understand. I confided in no one. Who could I tell? Friends would call me paranoid, a little unhinged. My parents. They would worry themselves into oblivion. No, I had to figure this out alone. Then, a week later, it escalated. I was walking home from the market just after sunset. The streets quiet and the sky painted in bruised shades of purple and gray. The leaves rustled unnaturally in the wind. I paused at the corner, sensing something behind me. Something not quite human. "You're being followed." The voice was low, barely a whisper, and I spun around. There was no one, only the street, empty and dimly lit by the flickering glow of a lamppost. My heart leaped into my throat. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my effort to sound steady. Silence. I hurried home, eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of movement. I locked the door behind me, double-checked the windows, and tried to convince myself that I had imagined it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching. That night, sleep refused me. My dreams returned with force. I was back in the forest, the trees looming like ancient sentinels. And there he was, Kel, standing in the moonlight. Eyes stormy and unreadable. "You shouldn't have come," he said, though his gaze softened when it met mine. His voice carried both warning and longing, a contradiction that left my chest aching. "They're watching. They always watch. And now, so are you." I didn't expect to see him again so soon, after days of whispers, shadows, and restless nights. I had convinced myself that maybe the forest had been a one-time intrusion into my ordinary life. Maybe the dreams, the pull I felt, the warnings, they were all figments of fear and imagination. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. It was late afternoon, and the sun had begun its slow descent behind the trees at the edge of town. I was walking along the path that led to the abandoned clearing, the same clearing where I had first felt him. The place I had avoided since that night. Something in me, some unseen thread, drew me there. A mixture of fear and curiosity propelled my steps forward, and then I saw him. Cale stood at the edge of the clearing, tall and impossibly still. The sunlight fell on him in shards, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw, the dark sweep of his hair, and those eyes, gray, silver, almost luminescent, catching the fading light like moonlight on water. Even from a distance, he radiated power. Alpha power, commanding, predatory, yet restrained, as if the world itself bent to him. But he refused to take more than he needed. My breath caught in my throat. My rational mind screamed at me to turn and run, but my body refused. My feet were rooted to the spot, as if drawn by gravity stronger than anything I'd ever known. The forest around him seemed darker, more alive, charged with a quiet electric tension. Then he moved, not aggressively, not threateningly, but with fluid precision, each step deliberate, controlled, measured. He stopped a few yards from me, still far enough to give me space, yet close enough that I could see the subtle tension in his posture. His gaze swept over me. My chest tightened with a mixture of fear and longing I didn't understand. "You came back," he said, his voice low and smooth, like a whisper sliding through silk. There was a weight to it, an authority, but also something else, something softer, something that made my heart ache without reason. I don't know why," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I just felt like I should." Cale tilted his head slightly, studying me, and I felt as though he could see into me. Not just the surface, the outward nerves, the confusion, but the parts I kept hidden even from myself. My fears, my desires, my loneliness, my curiosity. It made me shiver. "You feel it too," he said, more a statement than a question. And then he smiled just slightly, and the world seemed to shift around me. "The bond. It doesn't obey rules." I froze. Bond? My mind raced. Could he mean what I thought he meant? And yet the thought of it made my pulse race in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. My rational mind struggled to catch up with my instincts. Cale took a step closer, and I inhaled sharply, aware of the subtle pull between us. There was danger in him. I knew that instinctively. A power I couldn't name, lurking just beneath the surface. But there was also something magnetic, irresistible, something that drew me in despite the warnings. Echoing in my mind, "You shouldn't be here," he said again, this time with a tremor in his voice, a hint of vulnerability hidden beneath the alpha authority. "It's dangerous, I know," I whispered, unable to look away. "But I can't stay away either. He studied me for a long moment, as though weighing some impossible decision. And then, slowly, he lowered his head, just enough that our eyes met fully. The intensity was unbearable. His gaze felt like it reached into the deepest corners of my soul, exposing truths I didn't yet know. My chest tightened. My hands trembled. "You're mine," he said finally, a statement full of certainty and warning all at once. He didn't touch me, but the words alone sent a shiver through my entire body. Not in the way the world allows, but fated, marked. I blinked, trying to process what he said. Marked, fated. My heart thundered in my chest. It was impossible, dangerous. And yet, I had felt it. That pull, that thread connecting us, the moment our hands touched in the forest. I had felt it in dreams, in whispers, in moments I couldn't explain. The air between us grew heavy with unspoken words, with tension that made my skin prickle. I wanted to ask 100 questions, to demand answers, to scream at him that none of this made sense. And yet something deeper, something primal, held me silent. Something told me that words were unnecessary, that our connection dangerous, forbidden. Inexplicable spoke louder than any conversation ever could. Cale's gaze softened, though the intensity never left his eyes. "I cannot claim you," he said quietly, almost painfully. "The elders would never allow it. The pack would never forgive me." I felt my heart twist at his. Words, forbidden, dangerous. The very things that should have terrified me made my chest ache with longing. I wanted him, despite the rules, despite the danger, despite the fact that this was a path I could not turn back from once taken. And yet, I said softly, surprising even myself, "You're here." He let out a low, most imperceptible sigh, as if acknowledging the truth I had just spoken aloud. "I cannot stay away," he admitted, "even when I should, even when it would be safer for both of us. There's something about you, something I cannot ignore." His words made my breath catch. It was the pull of destiny, the thread that had drawn me to him from the start, made tangible, undeniable. Forbidden, yes, but no less real. And as much as I wanted to resist, to run, to pretend this wasn't happening, couldn't. I wanted him, and I feared him. The forest seemed to hold its breath around us. Even the wind softened, the rustle of leaves fading to a hush. It was just the two of us, caught in a moment that felt infinite. Suspended between danger and desire, between the ordinary and the impossible. Cale stepped closer, just enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. Not his hand, not his body, just him. The presence of him, and it was enough to make my knees weak. I could feel the pull stronger now, as though the forest itself acknowledged the bond we shared. "Whatever this is," I whispered, voice trembling, "it's not safe." He nodded, eyes dark and troubled. "I know, but nothing about fate is safe." We stood there in silence, the tension thick, the connection undeniable. The world had narrowed to the space between us, the thread that tied our hearts together. The unspoken knowledge that whatever we were, whatever this bond meant, our lives had changed forever. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, Cale moved backwards, stepping into the shadows. His eyes never left mine, but the distance between us grew. And when he disappeared entirely, leaving only the whisper of his presence, I realized something that made my heart ache and my mind reel. I was tethered to him, whether I wanted it or not, whether the world allowed it or not. The pull of forbidden attraction, of destiny, of something ancient and unyielding, left me breathless, conflicted, and utterly consumed by curiosity. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know if I would survive it. But I knew one thing. I could not forget him, and I could not escape. I tried to go back to normal. I really did. Monday morning arrived with its usual gray drizzle, the hum of traffic, the smell of coffee, and damp asphalt filling the air. My apartment felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing in with the weight of secrets I couldn't name. I told myself it was all in my mind, the shadow in the forest, Cale's sudden appearance, the strange pull I felt toward him. Logic demanded that I return to routine, that I ignore the impossible. But the world had already shifted. The first sign was smallest series of accidents that seemed minor but unnervingly precise. The first morning, my car refused to start, the engine stuttering as if it had a mind of its own. Later that day at work, I narrowly avoided a falling stack of books in the library I managed. It's an event that could have crushed me if I hadn't stepped back at the last second. A week later, a cup of coffee slipped from my hands in the cafeteria, shattering on the floor. These weren't normal coincidences. I could feel the subtle thread of intention in each moment. Someone or something was guiding the chaos, and then the dreams returned. They were no longer vague or distant. Each night I was drawn back into the forest, the moon casting long silver shadows, the air heavy with the scent of pine and something more. Raw Kale was always there waiting, eyes glowing, alert, and dangerous. In some dreams he watched me silently, as though assessing my every thought, every instinct. In others he spoke, his voice low and commanding. Words I could barely remember upon waking, yet their weight lingered like a stone in my chest. At first I tried to resist. I avoided the clearing near the forest, skipped my evening walks, and kept my distance from anything that reminded me of that night. But it was useless. The pull was too strong. Every shadow seemed to whisper his name. Every flicker of movement reminded me of his presence. Then, the first truly undeniable moment happened. I was walking home one evening, the sun gone and the sky bruised with the aftermath of a storm. The streets were quiet, the wind carrying the tang of wet earth. I was lost in thought when I noticed the faint outline of someone in the distance, standing at the edge of the park. My heart stopped. It was him, Kale. I froze, unsure whether to approach or run. My rational mind screamed that this was dangerous, forbidden, and impossible. Yet my feet moved forward as though guided by some invisible force. He didn't move toward me, but the air around him was alive with tension, an energy I couldn't name. My instincts screamed that I should stay back, that whatever power he held could sweep me away if I got too close. And yet, the closer I came, the more aware I became of how impossible it was to ignore him. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, eyes narrowing. "This is dangerous." "I know," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "But I can't stay away either." His gaze softened for a fleeting second, and I felt that pull again, an invisible tether wrapping around my heart, connecting us in a way I didn't understand but could not resist. The world narrowed to the space between us. The ordinary life I had clung to faded into irrelevance. "Something is coming," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "You won't be able to stay in your world much longer. You're part of this now, whether you want it or not." I shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of his words. I didn't want to be part of this world. I wanted to return to normal, to routine, to safety. But I knew in my bones that normal had already abandoned me. The forest, the shadows, the thread that connected me to him, they had claimed me. The next day, the warnings became impossible to ignore. At work, a man I had never seen approached me, his presence unsettlingly familiar. "You're marked," he said quietly, his eyes scanning me as if he could see past my skin into something deeper. Before I could ask what he meant, he was gone, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. My hands shook, and I realized I could no longer pretend these occurrences were random. The ordinary world felt fragile, as if a thin veil separated it from something darker, something more alive, something that could consume me if I wasn't careful. Even my apartment seemed compromised. The lights flickered without cause, shadows lingered longer than they should, and the faint sound of growling sometimes echoed from the forest beyond the windows. By evening, I was exhausted, my nerves raw. I had hoped that retreating to my room would bring some semblance of peace, but the forest called to me in dreams again. Kale's presence was heavier now, pressing against the edges of my consciousness, impossible to ignore. I could sense him in the night, just beyond the line of trees, a constant, magnetic force drawing me forward. And then it happened. I was walking home late, the streets empty and the wind cutting sharp. A shadow moved across the sidewalk ahead, faster than any human should be able to move. I froze, every instinct screaming danger. Yet curiosity or something deeper forced me to step closer, and then I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes, low to the ground, following me. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. My heart thumped wildly and my body screamed to run. But my feet felt rooted to the pavement. The creature stepped fully into the dim light. Not human. Not entirely. Its form shifted, muscles rippling beneath fur that seemed to shimmer like silver in the dark. A low growl rolled from its throat, deep and resonant, vibrating through the air, and then it was gone. Just like that, vanishing into the shadows, I collapsed against a nearby wall, gasping for breath. The city no longer felt safe. The world I had known ordinary, predictable, mundane was gone. The supernatural wasn't something distant or hidden anymore. It had found me, and it wasn't leaving. My dreams that night were worse, more vivid. Cale appeared closer than ever, and the forest seemed to bleed into my bedroom. "You cannot ignore this," he said, his voice a growl and a whisper all at once. "The threads are woven. You are part of it now. Danger follows you, and so does destiny." I woke in a cold sweat. My apartment suffused with the faint scent of pine and something wild. I knew he was near, not physically, but in every sense that mattered. I felt the pull stronger than ever, an invisible tether pulling me toward him and the danger he represented. The next morning, the line between ordinary and supernatural blurred further. My apartment door was slightly ajar, even though I had locked it. Papers on the counter were scattered, not by wind, not by accident. Something or someone had been inside. A chill ran through me as I realized I was no longer safe in my own home. Every rational thought told me to leave, to run, to hide. But I couldn't. Not because of fear. Not because of curiosity. Because of him, Cale, the Alpha. The thread that bound me to a world I could no longer resist by the time I left my apartment that day. I understood something I could no longer deny. The supernatural world had crossed into mine, and there was no going back. The ordinary life I had clung to was gone. Danger stalked me in the shadows. Whispers haunted my steps. And the pull toward Cale was undeniable, irresistible, and impossible to ignore. And somewhere in the forest, I knew. He was waiting. I didn't know how many nights I spent walking the edge of the forest, staring into the shadows, waiting for him. Cale's presence had become a constant ache in my chest, one I could not ignore, no matter how much I tried. And yet, when I felt him near, my fear sharpened into something else. A longing so raw it made my heart hammer and my hands shake. That evening, the sun had dipped behind the treetops, and the forest was painted in hues of deep violet and silver. I walked the same path as before, each step deliberate, drawn by the invisible tether that pulled me forward. And there he was, standing just beyond the trees, tall, silent, and impossibly composed. "Why do you keep coming here?" Cale asked, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the air around me. "I can't stop myself," I admitted, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. "It's like the forest calls me, and I feel drawn to you." He studied me, eyes narrowing slightly. Though there was no anger, only intensity, curiosity, and that weight of something unspoken. He took a slow step toward me, and the air seemed to shimmer with the subtle heat of his presence. "You don't understand what you're stepping into," he said quietly. "This world, my world, it's dangerous. You've felt the pull, yes, but it's more than attraction. It's fate, and fate has a price." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "I don't care about the danger," I said softly, though my voice betrayed the worry I tried to hide. "I want to understand. I want to know you." He exhaled slowly, a faint edge of something I couldn't place, relief perhaps, or resignation. "Curiosity can be deadly," he said, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And yet, I see it in you. I see the same pull I feel. Perhaps it cannot be avoided." There was a pause, and in that silence, the forest felt alive. The wind stilled. Leaves hung motionless in the air. And then, without warning, Cale stepped close enough that I could see the details of his face. The subtle tension in his jaw, the faintest quiver in his dark hair. My breath caught. "I shouldn't," he murmured, stopping just short of touching me. "I shouldn't let this happen. It's forbidden. You're human, and I am not." I could feel the intensity of his restraint, and it made my chest ache. The energy between us was electric, almost unbearable. And I wanted nothing more than to close the distance, to bridge the forbidden gap. But there was also fear. An instinctive caution that told me this connection was dangerous in ways I could not yet comprehend. "I don't care," I whispered. "It's real, isn't it? What we feel?" His gaze softened, dark eyes flickering with emotion that bordered on vulnerability, a side I had glimpsed only in dreams. "It is," he said quietly, "and that is what makes it forbidden. The pack, they would never allow this. My status, my responsibility, everything stands against it." And yet, despite the warnings, he reached out. Just his hand hovering near mine, not touching. Yet the proximity sent a shiver through me so intense I nearly stumbled backward. The magnetic tension was undeniable. "But we are drawn," he murmured, "and neither of us can ignore it." I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my chest, in the tips of my fingers. "Then what do we do?" Cale shook his head slowly, the faintest shadow of a smile flickering across his face. "We proceed carefully," he said, "and we learn. That is all I can promise." For the next hour we walked together at the edge of the forest. No one else was there, no wind, no rustling, only the quiet crunch of leaves beneath our feet. We spoke of small things at first: the weather, the forest, fleeting observations of the world beyond the trees. Each conversation deepened the connection, subtle threads weaving between us, binding us tighter without words. Yet with every laugh, every shared glance, every brush of his hand against mine, even if accidental, the tension grew. It was a dance on the edge of something forbidden, dangerous, and wholly irresistible. The more I tried to resist, the stronger the pull became. "You feel it too," Cale said at one point, stopping to look at me, eyes dark and stormy. "The thread that binds us, even if you do not understand it yet, it's there. Stronger than fear, stronger than reason." I nodded, unable to deny it. "I feel it," I admitted, voice barely audible. "It terrifies me. But it's also everything I've been waiting for." He regarded me in silence, that magnetic gaze making my heart race. Then, almost abruptly, his expression changed. His eyes narrowed slightly, scanning the trees, his posture tense, alert. I followed his gaze and froze, there in the shadows just beyond the clearing. Something moved. Fast, deliberate, silent, predatory. Cale's lips pressed into a thin line. "You shouldn't be here," he said again, but the edge in his voice was sharper now, urgent. "They've been watching. They've known you were marked the moment the thread touched you. And now one of them has followed you." My stomach lurched. "Followed me? Who? What?" Before I could finish, Cale stepped forward and vanished into the shadows with a speed that made my head spin. The trees seemed to shiver in his wake. A moment later, he reappeared, crouched low, his eyes locked on something I couldn't see. "What? What's happening?" I asked, panic rising. He rose, turning toward me, expression grim. "I need you to trust me," he said. "Do not move. Do not run. Just watch." From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, broad, and moving with a predatory grace. Not human. The glow of silver eyes reflected the fading light. I stepped back instinctively, heart hammering in my chest. Cale's expression hardened, and I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't a game, a dream, or a warning story. This was real. The supernatural world wasn't just around me. It was here, and it was watching. The figure stopped a few yards away, its head tilting slightly, sniffing the air. Cale's presence flared, tension radiating from him like heat from a fire. The creature let out a low growl, then almost reluctantly retreated into the shadows, disappearing as silently as it had come. Cale turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "You saw that?" he asked softly. "That was a scout." They are always watching, always searching. You are no longer safe in the ordinary world. I nodded, too stunned to speak. My hand shook. My chest ached. My heartbeat roared in my ears. Cale stepped closer again, the storm in his eyes softening into something almost tender. I cannot protect you completely, he admitted. Not yet. But I will try. You need to understand. You are part of this now. Part of my world. Part of a fate that cannot be avoided. I swallowed hard, my thoughts racing, my fear mingling with the undeniable pull toward him. I want to, I whispered. Even if it's forbidden. He studied me, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the space between us. Then he nodded once, sharply, and stepped back, his face dark with thought. We proceed carefully, he repeated, and you will know more soon. But for now, keep this to yourself. No one can know what you've seen. And be ready. Things are about to change. I watched him disappear into the trees again, leaving only the faint echo of his presence, the scent of pine and something wild. And the undeniable tether pulling me toward him. My pulse raced. My mind reeled. And then, just before I turned to leave the clearing, I saw it something that made my breath catch. A mark on a tree carved with impossible precision, a symbol I had never seen before, glowing faintly in the dusk. It pulsed with a strange energy, and I knew, without understanding why, that it was connected to Cale, to the pack, to the bond I could not escape. I shivered, heart hammering. Whatever I had stumbled into, whatever connection bound me to him, was only the beginning. The forbidden attraction, the pull of fate. And the looming danger had become undeniable, and I was completely, irrevocably caught in it. The glowing mark on the tree haunted me all night. It throbbed in my mind like a wound, pulsing with a rhythm I couldn't shake. Even in my dreams, I saw it etched in fire, glowing under moonlight as though it was alive. And Cale's face always near, his eyes dark and watchful, his presence both comfort and torment. When I awoke, my apartment was unnervingly silent. No birds outside, no traffic below, not even the hum of my refrigerator. Just silence, heavy and unnatural. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched by evening. The air had grown colder, thicker, carrying a scent I couldn't name, pine, iron, and something wild. I found myself back at the edge of the forest as though my body no longer belonged to me. And once again, he was there. Cale. He stood in the clearing, shadows gathering around him like old friends. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something raw, something I could feel pulling at my very soul. You came back, he said, his voice low, rougher than usual. I had to, I admitted. That mark. The thing I saw last night. Cale, what is it? What are you? For a long moment, he didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the faint rustle of the trees. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. You've seen too much to pretend anymore. But you need to understand knowing the truth is dangerous. Once you step into it, there's no going back. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. Maybe there's no going back anyway. Just tell me. He studied me as though weighing my soul in his hands. And then, slowly, he raised his head. His eyes glowed not metaphorically, not like a trick of light, but with a silver fire that flickered like moonlight on water. My breath caught. I am not like you, he said softly. I am of the pack. I am. A wolf of the night. A shifter. Alpha of those bound to the moon. The words rang in my ears, unbelievable and yet undeniable. My mind screamed that it was impossible. But my body remembered the glowing eyes I had seen in the shadows, the speed with which he vanished, the growl that had shaken me to my bones. You're a werewolf, I whispered. He didn't flinch at the word. Yes, and more. Bound by blood, by law, by the pull of fate. His eyes softened for a moment. The same fate that ties me to you. My knees weakened, and I took a step back. This is insane. It can't be real. It is real, he said firmly, stepping closer. You feel it. The thread between us. You've felt it since the first moment we met. It's the mark of the bond. The forbidden bond. Forbidden. The word struck me harder than anything else. My heart thundered in my chest, torn between fear and longing, disbelief and desire. Every instinct screamed that I should run, that this was dangerous beyond measure. And yet Ty stayed. Cale must have seen the storm in my eyes because his voice softened. I know this is more than you ever asked for, but you must believe me when I say I did not choose this. Neither of us did. Fate wove it, and now we are caught. I shook my head, unable to breathe. If it's fate, why does it feel like a curse? His jaw tightened, and for a moment his composure cracked. Because it is, he admitted. My kind. We are not meant to bond with yours. It is forbidden by the pack. If they knew, if they even suspected. He trailed off, his expression grim. A chill ran down my spine. What would they do? He didn't answer, and his silence was worse than any words. The forest grew darker around us, the night settling in, pressing against my skin. I tried to read his face to see the man behind the alpha, but what I saw terrified me as much as it drew me closer. Strength, power, control, and under it all, the hint of something broken. Why me? I whispered. Why now? I don't know, he said honestly. The bond chooses. The moon weaves. But I know this once it appears, it cannot be undone. The weight of his words crushed me. My world, once safe and ordinary, had cracked open into something vast and terrifying. And at the center of it was him, Cale, the alpha. My forbidden mate, yet even as fear coiled in my stomach, fascination burned just as fiercely. The way his eyes glowed, the way his voice vibrated through me, the way the air itself seemed to bend around him, I was captivated. We walked for a while in silence, the moon above casting silver light on the path. I tried to calm my breathing, to steady my thoughts, but every step beside him pulled me deeper. When his hand brushed mine by accident, I felt it like lightning in my veins. Be careful, he warned, almost to himself. The bond grows stronger each time we are near. The pack will sense it soon. But it wasn't the pack I was worried about. It was him. Because the more I learned, the more dangerous my feelings became. As if sensing my thoughts, Cale stopped suddenly. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and then said quietly, "There are things about me you still do not know. Things that might make you hate me." The words chilled me. What do you mean? He hesitated, jaw tight. There are. Rules, responsibilities, choices I've made. Blood I've spilled. To lead a pack is not to be innocent. Something in his tone, low, heavy, regretful, made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask more, but before I could, a branch snapped in the distance. Cale's head whipped toward the sound, his posture tense, predatory. The shadows shifted, and I swore I saw movement again. Another figure, another scout. But then it was gone, and Cale's expression darkened. "They're testing the borders," he said. "Watching us?" I swallowed hard. "And if they know?" "About us." His silence was my answer. When he finally turned back to me, his face was softer, but his words cut deep. "You cannot trust everything you see in me," he admitted. "Not yet. There are truths that could break us before we begin." I looked at him, heart aching with the weight of both fear and longing. I wanted to trust him, I wanted to believe in this impossible bond, but his warning left me hollow. "What are you hiding, Cale?" I whispered. His eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if I saw the man I was drawn to, or the beast he truly was. And in that moment, doubt coiled inside me like a snake. The world around me had shifted in ways I couldn't undo. It wasn't just the shadows in the forest or the strange whispers carried on the wind anymore. It was him, Damien Dot. He was both a wound and a balm. Every glance from his storm-dark eyes pierced me. Yet every word he spoke seemed to soothe something deep inside me I never knew was broken. And that contradiction was tearing me apart. The night after his confession, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed his voice saying what I wasn't sure I'd heard right. "You're my mate." Those words clung to me, wrapping themselves around my soul like invisible chains. I tossed beneath my blankets, the memory of his nearness igniting my skin. By dawn, I tried to tell myself it was all a mistake, that I'd imagined the fire in his gaze, the way his hands trembled as though holding back something fierce and dangerous. But when I walked into town that morning, I noticed how people looked at me differently. Not directly, but out of the corners of their eyes, almost as if they knew something I didn't. At the market, Mrs. Dwyer, the old widow who usually smiled kindly at me, gripped my wrist as I reached for an apple. Her fingers were ice cold, her voice low and trembling. "Child," she whispered, "don't go near the woods tonight. The pack is restless." My heart stuttered. "Pack?" I asked, but her gaze darted away. She let go of me so quickly I nearly dropped the fruit. Without another word, she shuffled off. Her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders as if she feared the very air might betray her. I stood there frozen, the apple still in my hand. The word echoed inside me. Pack. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it whispered in connection to Damien. People avoided talking about him, but when they did, that word often lingered like smoke pack. And now it was becoming harder to ignore. That evening, I saw him again. Not in the woods this time, but in town. He was leaning against the old brick wall of the bookstore, half in shadow, as though he belonged there. His presence pulled me in like gravity, though every step I took toward him made my heart beat faster in warning. "You shouldn't be here," I said softly. His lips curved, not into a smile, but into something raw. And yet, here I am. "People are starting to talk." "They've always talked," he replied, pushing away from the wall with a fluid grace that made me think of a predator more than a man. "But their words don't matter. Only yours do." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that my words didn't matter, that I wasn't brave enough to stand in whatever storm followed him. But instead, my throat tightened, and I said nothing. We walked together in silence through the narrow streets until the houses gave way to the fields. The sky burned orange and violet as the sun sank, and the air felt heavy with something unspoken. Finally, I stopped. "Damien, what do you want from me?" His jaw clenched, and for a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he looked at me with a kind of desperation that unsettled me. "Everything." The word broke from him like a vow. "But I can't have it. Not without destroying you." I stared at him, my heart breaking in confusion. "Why?" "Because," he said, his voice low and rough, "where I come from, who I am, it doesn't allow love. Not with someone like you. Not with someone I was never meant to claim." I should have walked away then. I should have demanded, he explained, demanded he stop speaking in riddles. But instead, I stood there trembling, caught between wanting to run and wanting to step closer. That night, I dreamed again. Only this time, it wasn't of shadows or whispers. It was Damien. His face, his eyes, his voice, calling my name as though I belonged to him. But then, the dream twisted, his body contorted, bones snapping, fur tearing through skin. He became something else, something not human, and yet still him. I woke in a cold sweat, the image carved into my mind. And though fear clenched my chest, so did longing, thought the following days blurred. I tried to return to normal life, walking to the market, tending my small garden, pretending the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. But Damien was never far. Sometimes I caught him at the edge of the woods, watching me. Sometimes I heard his voice when no one else was near, like a whisper carried on the wind. And once, when I turned a corner too quickly, I nearly collided with him. His hand caught my arm before I fell, and in that touch, I felt the truth. My soul recognized him, even if my mind refused to, but danger followed him like a shadow. One evening, I found a dead crow on my doorstep, its wings twisted unnaturally. A warning. I didn't know from whom, but I felt in my bones it was tied to him. The next day, 2 strangers came through town, men with cold eyes and sharp questions. They asked about Damien, about whether anyone had seen him, their tone making it clear they weren't friends. That night I confronted him. "Who are they? Why are they looking for you?" He looked away, his silence louder than words. And in that silence, fear took root inside me. Still, no matter how dangerous it felt, I couldn't cut the bond forming between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost breaking. I told myself I'd keep my distance, that I'd never pull you into my world. But it's too late. You're already in it. I shook my head, trembling. I don't understand any of this, and I don't know if I can. His eyes burned with something fierce, something aching. You don't have to understand, just trust that I'd never let harm come to you. I wanted to believe him. But the dead crow, the strangers, the whispers in town, they all said otherwise. That night, as I lay in bed, a howl split the darkness outside my window. It was long, mournful, and undeniably real. My body froze. And then another howl answered, closer this time, echoing across the valley. The pack. I rushed to the window, heart hammering. In the moonlight, I saw movement at the edge of the woods, figures too large to be ordinary wolves. Shadows darting between trees. And standing apart from them all, watching me, was Damien. His eyes caught the moonlight, glowing faintly, unmistakably inhuman. I stumbled back from the glass, my breath shattering. The choice pressed down on me like a weight. Pull away now, or surrender to destiny and everything it demanded. I couldn't shake the sound of that howl. It lived inside my chest, vibrating through my bones even long after the night had gone quiet again. I told myself it was just wolves, ordinary wolves, but I knew better. Damien's eyes had caught the moonlight, glowing like no humans ever could. And if what I'd seen was real, then the town whispers, the warnings, the restless shadows, they weren't just superstition. They were truth. The following morning, I found something odd tucked beneath my door. A folded piece of parchment, yellowed with age. My name was written on it in a hand I didn't recognize. Inside, the words were brief but heavy. The answers you seek are not in the woods. They're in your blood. Ask your grandmother about the night of your birth. I dropped the note as though it burned me. My grandmother had passed away years ago, but the memory of her came back with startling clarity, her watchful eyes, the way she always seemed to know things before anyone else. She used to warn me never to walk in the forest alone. I'd brushed it off as an old woman's caution. But now, that night, I dug out an old wooden chest I hadn't touched since her passing. It smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, her scent lingering like a ghost. Inside were letters, photographs, and a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. The journal trembled in my hands as I opened it. Her handwriting filled the first page. To my granddaughter. Should she ever need to know? I turned the pages slowly, each line unraveling a truth I wasn't ready to face. She wrote about the old families who lived in this valley long before the town was built. Families bound to the land by blood and vow. Some had been cursed with the gift or burden of shifting beneath the moon. Others carried the weight of prophecy. Their lives entangled with fates not their own. And then I saw my name. She will be the bridge between the two worlds. She will stand where human and wolf collide. And her choice will determine the survival of both. The journal slipped from my hands. I pressed my shaking palms to my face, my heart thundering. A prophecy. About me? I didn't want to believe it. I told myself it was nonsense, the ramblings of an old woman who believed too deeply in stories. But then another memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought about in years. I was a child, barely 5, wandering too close to the forest edge. I remembered falling, scraping my knee, crying out for help. And then, ice. Golden eyes watching me from the trees. Not menacing, but familiar somehow. I'd never told anyone about it, not even my grandmother. Now, I wondered if she already knew. The next evening, I confronted Damien. He was waiting for me at the edge of the woods, as though he'd known I would come. His expression tightened when he saw the journal clutched in my hands. "You knew?" I accused. My voice cracked under the weight of everything I'd discovered. "You knew I was part of this." His silence told me everything. I stepped closer, my fear twisting into anger. "Tell me. Tell me what I am." He closed the space between us in 2 strides, his hand brushing mine as if to steady me. His voice was low, but it carried the force of a storm. "You're not one of us," he said. "You're not untouched either. Your bloodline is ancient. Your grandmother belonged to a line of seers humans bound to prophecy. And you?" He hesitated, his eyes burning into mine. "You're the one foretold." The bridge. The choice, the air left my lungs. A prophecy. Yes, his jaw clenched. And it binds us both. My mind spun, every thought crashing into the next. A prophecy. A cursed bloodline. Me at the center of it all. It felt impossible. And yet, the journal's words, Damien's eyes. The howl in the night, they were undeniable. "I don't want this," I whispered. "Neither do I." His voice broke. Raw with the pain I hadn't seen before. But fate doesn't care what we want. It only cares what we are. In the days that followed, I felt the weight of invisible threads pulling at me. The town seemed to shift. People watching me longer than they should. Whispers cutting off when I entered a room, and my dreams grew darker. I saw visions of fire in the valley, wolves running under a blood-red moon, and myself standing in the center of it all. Sometimes Damien was beside me, his hand gripping mine. Other times he was gone, and I stood alone as everything burned. The dreams left me trembling, drenched in sweat, unsure of where dream ended and fate began. Finally, one evening, Damien came to me not as a shadow in the woods, but as a man desperate for truth. His shoulders were heavy, his voice strained. "There's something you don't know," he said. "Something your grandmother kept from you. You weren't supposed to survive the night you were born." I froze. "What are you talking about?" His eyes softened, but his words cut sharp. "The pack had orders. The prophecy frightened them. They thought ending it before it began would protect us all. But your grandmother, she made a bargain. She gave up something, someone to keep you alive." My breath caught. "Someone?" He nodded, his expression haunted. "Your mother." The ground seemed to vanish beneath me. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "No, my mother died giving birth to me. That's what I've always been told. That's what they wanted you to believe." His voice was a whisper now. A confession carried on the wind. "But the truth is worse. She traded her life, her freedom, to the pack so you could live. And she's not gone, not truly. She's bound to them still." The world tilted. My knees nearly buckled as the revelation slammed into me. My mother, alive, bound, trapped in a fate I couldn't yet understand. Damien stepped forward, his hand reaching for mine. "You needed to know. Because the prophecy isn't just about us. It's about her too. And now you must decide whether to free her, or let the prophecy consume us all." I pulled my hand back, my heart racing. The truth was too heavy, too cruel. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about myself, was a lie. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just a girl caught in forbidden attraction. I was part of something ancient, dangerous, and bigger than both of us. Who was I, really? A granddaughter? A daughter? A cursed bridge between 2 worlds? Or something else entirely? Something not even Damien had dared to say aloud. The night after Damien's revelation, I couldn't breathe without feeling the weight of it. My mother was alive, bound to the pack, hidden away by a truth no one dared speak aloud. Every memory I had of her, every whispered story, felt like smoke in my hands. And yet, it wasn't just the shock of her fate that haunted me. It was Damien. He'd known. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to make me question every word he'd ever said to me. Every look that burned too long. Every promise that seemed to hold back secrets. When I saw him again at the edge of the woods, I didn't run to him. I didn't let myself. "You should have told me sooner," I said. My voice breaking, his expression tightened, pain flickering in his eyes. "I wanted to protect you. Protect me," I snapped. "Or protect yourself." "Which one, Damien?" He stepped closer, but I held up my hand, stopping him. His hesitation cut deeper than any lie. For the first time, I wondered if fate had tied me to a man who might not deserve me. The tension between us only grew in the days that followed. The town was restless, and I wasn't the only one who felt it. Men lingered in the tavern longer, their voices low and grim. Women whispered about shadows moving through the valley, and then the strangers returned. 2 of them, dressed in dark coats, despite the summer heat, their eyes scanning every face like hunters scenting prey. They weren't from here, that much was clear. Their presence carried a weight that silenced every room they entered. They came to my door at dusk. "Have you seen him?" one of them asked. His voice was smooth, but his gaze sharp as a blade. "Seen who?" My voice barely held steady. "The Alpha," he said simply, as if the word itself should be enough. I shook my head, trying to mask the way my pulse thundered. "I don't know what you're talking about." But their smiles told me they didn't believe me that night. I rushed to find Damien. He was waiting as if he'd known they would come. "They're not hunters," he said grimly, after I told him what happened. "They're enforcers. From another pack. What do they want?" His jaw clenched. "Me? Why?" He looked away, shame flickering in his expression. "Because I broke their law. By claiming you, my chest tightened. But you said you didn't claim me. I tried not to. I tried to fight it. But fate doesn't bend, and now they know. They'll do whatever it takes to tear us apart." The danger wasn't just rumor anymore, it was real. Breathing down our necks, and then it struck. 3 nights later, as the moon climbed high, I heard a commotion near the fields. I ran outside, heart pounding, and saw them, the strangers, dragging someone between them. Damien, his face was bloodied. His wrists bound with chains that glowed faintly under the moonlight. He struggled, but the chains held him as if forged from the night itself. "Stop!" I screamed, rushing toward them. One of the men turned, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Stay back, girl. This isn't your fight." But it was. Every part of me knew it was. I threw myself forward, grabbing at the chains. They burned my hands, searing my skin, but I didn't let go. Damien groaned, his strength faltering. "Run," he rasped, his voice raw with pain. Don't fight them. No." I cried, tears blurring my vision. "I won't leave you." The strangers sneered, pulling harder, dragging both of us down. One raised his hand as though to strike me, but before the blow could land, a howl split the air. It wasn't Damien's. From the woods, shadows surged, wolves, massive and fierce, their eyes gleaming in the dark. They crashed into the clearing, teeth bared. Forcing the strangers to release Damien, I stumbled back, pulling him with me as chaos erupted. Growls, snarls, and screams tangled in the night air. When it was over, the strangers were gone, vanished into the dark, but not without leaving a mark. Damien collapsed to his knees, blood seeping from deep cuts across his arms and chest. I knelt beside him, trembling. "You need help." His eyes fluttered open, their glow faint, but still burning. "No, I need you to trust me." My heart ached. "How can I when you keep so much from me?" His hand found mine, weak but insistent. "Because without you, I can't fight this. And if I can't fight, they'll take everything, your mother, this town. Even you." The weight of his words pressed down on me. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. But the cracks in his silence, the lies half told, they haunted me. That night, I dreamed again. This time, I saw not fire, but chains. Chains wrapped around my mother, around Damien, around me. They glowed with the same strange light that had bound him. And from the shadows, a voice whispered, "The bridge must choose who to save. One lives, one falls." I woke gasping, my skin damp with sweat, my heart breaking with a choice I wasn't ready to make. The next evening, as the sun dipped low, I returned to the old journal, searching for answers. My grandmother's words were there, waiting. The bridge will face betrayal not once, but twice. She must decide if love is strength or weakness. I pressed my hands to my face, tears burning my eyes. Betrayal. Was it Damien? Or was it someone else, waiting in the dark, ready to strike? That night, as I stood at my window, a figure appeared at the edge of the trees. Not Damien this time. A woman, her silhouette was familiar, achingly so. Mother. The word slipped from me, breaking on my lips. She didn't move. She only raised a hand, beckoning me closer before vanishing into the shadows. My breath shattered. Had I imagined it? Or had fate just twisted the knife deeper? The night my mother appeared at the edge of the trees, I barely slept. Her silhouette haunted me, fragile, flickering, gone as quickly as it had come. Yet something inside me whispered it hadn't been a dream. When dawn broke, I found myself walking to the woods as though pulled by invisible strings. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made me flinch, but I kept going. I had to know if she was real. Damien was waiting for me there. His eyes scanned me, his jaw tight. You saw her, didn't you? The breath left my lungs. It was her. My mother. He nodded once, grim. She's alive. But she's not free. She's bound to them. Bound to who? I demanded before he could answer. The woods stirred. A low growl rippled through the air. And then they emerged. The enforcers. They moved like shadows made flesh. 3 this time instead of 2. Their coats black. Their eyes gleaming with cold intent. One stepped forward, his voice cutting like steel. The girl belongs with us. She carries the blood. The prophecy binds her. Hand her over. Alpha Damien's body shifted subtly, stance lowering. Protective, every inch of him vibrating with danger. She's not yours to take. She isn't yours either. The man sneered. You broke the law when you claimed her. Now she will pay the price. I felt the world tilt, my breath hitching. Claimed, that word again? My pulse hammered as my gaze shot to Damien. He'd denied it, said he hadn't. But now, Damien, I whispered, my voice trembling, tell me they're lying. He didn't answer, and in his silence, I heard the truth. The air crackled with tension, the enforcers circling like predators. Damien's chest rose and fell in sharp bursts, his body taut. Ready for violence? You should have told me, I said. My voice breaking. I wanted to, he said quickly, eyes burning with desperation. But I thought I could keep you safe by holding it back. Safe. My laugh was hollow, strangled. Look around us. Do I look safe to you? The enforcers advanced. Damien stepped forward, shielding me with his body. Run, he growled. No, I said, gripping his arm. I'm not leaving you. But I barely got the words out before everything erupted. The first enforcer lunged, chains gleaming in his hands. Damien moved faster than I'd ever seen, shifting mid-motion, bones snapping, fur bursting from skin. His form grew larger, darker, more terrifying than anything in my dreams. The alpha. The sight rooted me to the ground, even as fear surged through me. My heart ached with something sharper recognition. He was mine, and I was his. But the fight left no room for tenderness. Damien clashed with the enforcers, teeth and claws flashing. Chains cut the air, sparking when they struck against his hide. He roared, a sound that shook the trees, but for every blow he landed, another came back harder. I tried to move, to help somehow, but one of the men caught me. His grip like iron, he yanked me against him. You're coming with us, he hissed. I thrashed, kicking, clawing, but it was no use. His strength dwarfed mine. My screams tangled with the sound of battle, but I refused to stop. Let her go. Damien's voice thundered, even through the growl of his wolf form. The man only tightened his grip. One wrong move, Alpha, and she dies. Time slowed. Damien froze, his chest heaving, eyes blazing. The enforcers smiled like they'd already won. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Her. My mother. She emerged from the trees, her face pale, her body trembling as though weighed down by invisible chains. Her eyes so much like mine locked onto me, brimming with sorrow. Enough, she cried, her voice breaking. Don't hurt her. Take me instead. The world shattered around me. Mother, I screamed, struggling against the enforcer's hold. But she didn't look at me. She looked at Damien. And in her eyes, I saw it the truth. She knew him. She knew everything. Release her, the leader of the enforcers ordered. The one holding me hesitated. But the prophecy, she is not the bridge, my mother said quickly, her voice shaking. I am. My breath caught. What are you saying? Her eyes filled with tears, but she held my gaze. I should have told you long ago. The prophecy was mine before it was ever yours. You were meant to live free, not bound to this curse. The words sliced through me, leaving nothing but confusion and dread. Had everything been a lie? My grandmother's journal, Damien's warnings, the visions that haunted me, were they wrong? Or was my mother sacrificing herself to protect me? The enforcers closed in, chains rattling. Damien surged forward, but one of them lashed the glowing links across his chest, sending him crashing to the ground with a cry of pain. No, I screamed, breaking free long enough to fall beside him. His body shuddered, the light searing into his skin. Run, he gasped, his voice ragged. Please just run, but I couldn't. My hands pressed against his wounds, desperate, useless. My heart tore in two, the choice clawing at me. If I stayed, I might lose him. If I ran, I might lose everything. The leader raised his hand, chains coiling like serpents. It's over. The Alpha falls tonight. And then, in the silence before the blow landed, I heard it, my mother's voice, clear and sharp. Take me. Spare them both. The chains froze midair. The enforcers turned. Damien's eyes widened. And I broke. Because in that moment, I realized the impossible. If they took her, I might lose her forever. But if they didn't, Damien would die before my eyes. 2 lives. One choice, I opened my mouth to scream, to plead, to do anything but before I could. The chains struck. A burst of light seared across the clearing, blinding, deafening. When it cleared, Damien was gone, vanished, the enforcers. 2 had disappeared into the night, taking him with them. I was left kneeling on the ground. The air heavy with silence, my mother trembling in the shadows, her tears glistening in the moonlight. And the only thought pounding through my chest was this: I've already lost him. And if I don't find him soon, I may lose myself too. The forest felt colder after Damien vanished. The silence that followed the blinding burst of light clung to my skin like frost, every breath sharp and painful. My mother's trembling figure was the only sound, the quiet sobs she tried to swallow. They've taken him, it whispered, the words cutting me more than any blade. She nodded, but her face twisted with a guilt that made my stomach churn. They've been waiting for this. You were never the true target. Damien was. I shook my head. No, they wanted me too. They kept saying I carried the blood, that the prophecy bound me. Her eyes brimmed with sorrow. Because it does, but not in the way you think. We walked back to the cabin, the night thick with unanswered questions. Inside, the fire sputtered low, shadows twitching across the walls. My mother sat heavily, her shoulders hunched. You need the truth, she said. No more hiding. I braced myself, my heart hammering. You are not cursed, she whispered. You are chosen. Our family line was tied to the Alpha's blood generations ago. We were meant to guide them to balance their power. But when love crosses the bond, when blood and heart intertwined, the prophecy awakens. That is why they fear you. Because together, you and Damien could tip the scales of the entire pack. The room spun around me. So all this time, the danger wasn't because I was weak. It was because I was strong. My mother nodded, tears streaking her face. And now Damien suffers for it. The weight of her words sank deep into my chest. My fear twisted into something sharper, fiercer. Determination. I'm going after him. I said the journey to the heart of the woods felt endless. My mother guided me, her steps steady, though her body seemed fragile. Every movement laced with fatigue. She led me to the ruins of an old stone circle, its edges carved with symbols that pulsed faintly in the moonlight. They'll bring him here, she said. This is where they seal their victories, where they break alphas. I touched the rough stone, a chill shooting up my arm. And what do I do when they come? Her hand found mine, trembling. You don't fight their way. You fight yours. The prophecy binds you to Damien. That bond is your strength. If you trust it, if you trust him, nothing can break it. I wanted to believe her, but when the wind shifted and the scent of iron and ash filled the air, belief turned to dread. They were already here. The enforcers stepped from the trees, Damien shackled between them. His head hung low, his body battered, but his eyes when they found me flared with fire. Run, he rasped, voice raw. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. The leader sneered. You came. How noble. How foolish. Chains rattled as they forced Damien to his knees, glowing links digging into his skin. He groaned, the sound tearing through me like a blade. Stop it! I cried, surging forward. Two of them blocked my path, eyes cold. The bond ends tonight, one said. The Alpha dies, and the bloodline ends with him. No, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my body. Not tonight. I closed my eyes. I thought of every moment with Damien, the way his eyes softened when he let his guard down, the way his voice carried warmth even when he fought to stay cold, the way my heart had always known him before my mind dared to admit it, and something inside me shifted. Heat surged through my veins. A pulse that didn't belong to just me. The bond. I felt it alive, burning, unbreakable. The enforcers faltered, sensing it too. The leader snarled. She awakens. Chains tightened around Damien, sparks flying as they glowed brighter. He cried out, his body arching in pain. I screamed, but not in fear and fury. The air crackled, the stone circle trembling beneath us. The marks etched in the ground lit up, blazing with the same heat that raced through me. And then the chains shattered. Damien roared, the sound shaking the night as his form shifted. Fur bursting, eyes glowing like molten gold. But he wasn't just the Alpha anymore. Something in him mirrored what had awakened in mere bond, weaving us together, stronger than before. The enforcers lunged, but Damien met them head-on, claws slashing, teeth tearing. Their shadows collided in a blur of violence. One broke through, charging at me. I braced, but before he could strike, my mother stepped between us. Her hands glowed with light, ancient symbols searing across her skin. Enough, she cried, her voice like thunder. The enforcer froze, his body convulsing as though held in place by invisible chains. With a final scream, he collapsed into ashdot. I staggered, staring at her. Mother, how? Her face twisted in pain, but she only shook her head. There's no time. Finish this. The leader remained, his strength towering, his form shifting into something monstrous, half man, half beast, his eyes burning red. He lunged for Damien, their bodies colliding with earth-shaking force. Damien fought with everything he had. But the leader's power was overwhelming. Blow after blow sent him crashing to the ground, blood staining his fur. No. I screamed. Rushing forward, the leader raised his claws for the final strike, and then E stepped between them. The claws tore through the air, inches from my chest. But instead of pain, light exploded outward, blinding and searing. The bond, I felt Damien's strength surge into me and mine into him. Together, we pushed back, the force knocking the leader to the ground. He snarled, writhing, but the light only grew, swallowing him whole. And then silence. The leader was gone. I collapsed to my knees. The power draining out of me, my chest heaving. Damien stumbled forward, his body battered, his hands trembling as he reached for me. You, his voice cracked. You saved me. No, I whispered, clutching his hand. We saved each other. For a moment there was nothing but the sound of our breaths, our hearts beating in rhythm. But then a cry tore through the clearing. We turned. My mother was on the ground, her body limp, her glow fading. Mother, I screamed, rushing to her side. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but tender. You've fulfilled it, she whispered. The bond is stronger than the curse. But every bond demands a price. My chest tightened. No, don't say that. We can heal you. We can, she shook her head, her hand brushing my cheek. Live, my child. Live free. And with that, her eyes closed. The fire of the circle flickered out. The night fell silent, and I was left clutching her Damien's hand on my shoulder. The weight of victory heavy with unbearable loss. The clearing was silent except for the whisper of the wind and the crackle of dying embers. I knelt beside my mother's still form, her hands slipping from mine, her warmth fading with each passing heartbeat. My chest ached with a hollow grief, the kind that threatened to swallow me whole. But even in her stillness, she looked peaceful, like a woman who had carried too much for too long and had finally set her burdens down. Damien crouched beside me, his hands steady on my back. His touch was grounding, pulling me back from the edge. She gave everything for us, he said softly, his voice heavy with respect. I wasn't ready, I whispered, tears sliding freely down my face. I thought I had more time. No one is ever ready to lose the person who raised them. His voice cracked just slightly, betraying his own grief. But she didn't leave you empty. She left you strong. I pressed my forehead against my mother's, closing my eyes. I'll carry you with me always. The forest seemed to sigh around us, as though acknowledging her passing. When the sun broke the horizon, the world shifted. Light spilled over the trees, chasing away shadows, painting the stone circle gold. I stood with Damien's arm around me, my body weary, but my spirit strangely calm. The leader was gone. The enforcers scattered Orash. And yet the victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like survival, raw and fragile. Damien turned to me, his golden eyes weary but burning with something new, something steady. It's over, he said, though there was a question buried in his tone, as if asking me to confirm it. I nodded, though deep down I knew it wasn't truly the end. Shadows always lingered. But this battle, this curse, was broken. For now, that was enough. We buried my mother beneath the oldest oak at the edge of the clearing. Its roots stretched deep, its branches wide, as though built to guard her rest. I laid a sprig of wildflowers on the soil, whispering a prayer I didn't know the words to but trusted she would understand. Damien stood beside me in silence, his presence a quiet promise. When I finally rose, I felt lighter. Wounded, yes, but lighter. As we walked back to the cabin, he reached for my hand, his fingers laced with mine, tentative but certain. As though testing whether I'd pull away, I didn't. The cabin felt different without her, empty but alive, as though her spirit lingered in the wood and stone, watching over us. I sank into the chair by the fire, exhaustion seeping into my bones. Damien leaned against the mantel, his eyes fixed on the flames. You should hate me, he said quietly. I looked up, startled. He didn't meet my gaze. If you hadn't met me, your life would have been ordinary, safe. Your mother would still be Stop. I cut him off sharper than I intended. Don't you dare blame yourself for what happened. She chose this path, just like I chose you. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes raw and vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. And what if that choice destroys you? Then I'd rather be destroyed than live a life where I never knew you, I said, voice steady even as my hands trembled. For a moment, the only sound was the fire. Then Damien crossed the room, kneeling before me, his hands cupping mine as though I was something precious. You don't know what you've done to me, he whispered. I spent years believing my heart was a weapon, that I couldn't love without breaking everything I touched. But you changed that. I felt the truth of it deep in my bones. And you changed me. You made me see that strength isn't about hiding. It's about opening, even when it hurts. Days blurred into weeks. The forest healed. So did we, in our own ways. I returned to the library, dusting off books I'd once ignored. I studied the symbols my mother had kept hidden, unraveling her journals filled with prophecies and warnings. For the first time, I didn't read them with fear. I read them with purpose. Damien spent hours with his pack, reshaping what it meant to lead. He refused to rule with fear. Instead, he spoke of balance, of bonds, of futures that didn't repeat the past. At night, we found each other again, sometimes in silence. sometimes in words, but always in presence. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of fire and rose, Damien led me back to the stone circle. The ruins were quiet, no longer threatening. The carvings glowed faintly in the twilight, pulsing gently like the rhythm of a heart. He took my hands, his gaze steady. This place once tried to break us. I wanted to witness something else instead. My breath caught. "I can't promise you safety," he said. "The world will never let us be ordinary. But I can promise you this: whatever comes, we face it together. Not as alpha and human. Not as prophecy and fate. Just as us." Emotions swelled in my chest, so strong I could barely speak. "That's all I want. Just us." He smiled then, rare, unguarded. Beautiful Dot. And as the last light of day faded, I felt the bond between us settle, not as a chain, but as wings. I still dream of my mother. Sometimes she's in the kitchen, stirring tea. Sometimes she's in the woods, watching from afar. Always, she smiles. And in those dreams, I hear her voice, live free. So I do. I live with loss and love braided together, knowing that pain and joy are not opposites, but companions. I live with a heart that has been broken and mended stronger. I live with Damien, who once was my danger, now my home. The forest no longer feels haunted. It feels alive, Dot, when the wind stirs the branches. I don't shiver. I listen because I know the shadows aren't here to consume me anymore. They're here to remind me of what I survived, what I chose, and what I'll never forget. I am no longer the girl who feared the woods. I am the woman who walked into the darkness, found the Alpha's forbidden love, and chose to stay. And I would choose it again, always.